Welcome to another episode of Mysteries Unknown. In this podcast, I've got John with me, and John had a really scary Class A encounter with Bigfoot while he was out hiking in the mountains of Oregon. Come really close to this creature. I'll let him jump into that in just a second, but I just want to say thanks again for being here. It still continues to blow my mind, all the support. I appreciate you guys being part of this podcast. I couldn't do it without you, but let's just jump right into the story. John, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Josh. Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, yeah, man, I'm just glad you're here. Thanks for taking the time to share the story with my audience. But take us back to 2012 and walk us through this encounter.
Okay, well, for the listeners out there that are from Oregon, this is happening in Benton County in the mountains above Alsea, Oregon. This was March 2012, so we're at the anniversary of it coming up here. I was living in Oregon at the time with my then fiance, and I was out taking a hike. I'm from Chicago, and I don't know anything about, the outdoors and that sort of thing. So I'm out there with like a total greenhorn. I don't have a camera. I don't have my phone. I don't have a firearm. I'm just, humping it through the timber country that the timber companies own. And I was crossing some timberland that's adjacent to Alsea Deadwood Highway, just past Swamp Creek. And I got a tingle of something was approaching, like you do if you're walking down a hallway and you reach the corner and someone else is coming around the corner. You know they're there, but you haven't seen them yet. So I stopped and looked up, and apparently it was doing the same thing because it stopped and looked up. And there was 20 feet away from me a big male Sasquatch, and he was about 8 feet tall. Weight's difficult to estimate. I mean, my mind says 800 pounds, but I could be overestimating. I've never been so scared in my life. I'm a former first responder, and I'm used to running into danger, and this was something totally beyond that. I froze, and I couldn't move. I was so terrified. And it stood there swaying back and forth and didn't make any noise. And after studying me for a little bit, and after I avoided myself, he turned and walked away the way he came, totally nonplussed with me. I mean, I impressed him not one little bit. But, I had to wait until he was well gone before I could move again. Then I ran home and explained to the fiancée what was going on, and she thought it was funny. I didn't think it was funny. But, it was, like I said, about 8 feet tall, big and heavy, black hair all over, gray-black skin like you see on a gorilla in the zoo, a hooded nose, just like you've seen pictures of Neanderthal men in the books. No facial hair. There wasn't a beard or mustache, that sort of thing. And it was raining, and there was no wind, so I didn't detect any smell or anything like that. So there was none of the bad stench that gets reported a lot of times. I've never been so scared of anything in my life, because it was 2 steps and it could have been on top of me. It was definitely well within charge range. So,
That's a really, really scary encounter, especially being so close to this creature and then being out there as far as you were, in the rural parts of Oregon like that. Before this encounter, had you had any kind of inkling, or did you know anything about Bigfoot at all before this encounter?
Well, when I was a kid, I saw the Patterson-Gimlin film on the news, and it struck me as that was real. That wasn't somebody in a suit. But it kind of faded into the background as time progressed. And then something that I was oohing and eyeing over when I was 12 suddenly is right in front of me when I'm 40. So, that was a wake-up call for me.
Yeah, definitely would be. And I can imagine that on the way back to your house from there, that was probably a pretty long walk. What do you think it wanted, and why do you Why do you think it didn't charge at you? What do you think it just turned around and walked the other way?
I think there's enough people in the area of that particular area where it's used to avoiding rather than confronting. Because the next thing you know, there's a bunch of guys with guns out looking for it. So,
well, that's a good answer, man. These things know how to survive, and they know how to stay hidden, and that makes a lot of sense. With all that being said, and you mentioned it in the very beginning, you talked about feeling like somebody was there. Could you describe that feeling for our audience? Kind of what that felt like?
Oh, sure. It's like a change in pressure, in air pressure, like something's moving towards you. So you automatically look up to take perspective of what's going on, because you're obviously missing something. And it was surprising. It's surprised to see me. Otherwise, I don't think it would have gotten that close. It would have avoided me continuously. So if that's any fuel to anybody's fire out there, maybe Bigfoot gets daydreaming himself and makes mistakes.
Yeah, you hear a lot about that kind of deal with these creatures, those kind of encounters, because a lot of times people will walk up on them, they'll run into you. I just had a gentleman on the other day where a Bigfoot creature ran right into his 18-wheeler while he was driving. So the thing just ran right into him, and I know these creatures are intelligent, but it makes you wonder why they do the things that they do. I really would be curious to know, John, after an encounter like that, how that changed your life, man. How did that affect you after that?
Well, let's see. For a while, I became like Captain Ahab. I moved home to Illinois, and we had some sightings in the Brookfield area along the Des Plaines River. And BFRO wrote those up. But I went, was out in the field tracking after it. Didn't find much of anything as far as evidence of its passing, but we kept getting occasional sighting reports. So I was like Captain Ahab chasing Moby Dick there for a while. Eventually, I just sort of, I don't want to say lost interest, but it became something where I was getting older and it was becoming more of a young man's game. So I sat back and did some more armchair research than in the field.
I think most of us go down a rabbit hole with this kind of stuff when this happens, these encounters, when you have these things, they really do change your life and change your perspective on things, and it will definitely suck you in, and it is a rabbit hole that you'll go down forever if you're not careful. But I'd be curious to know if you would love to see this creature again, if given the opportunity.
If given the opportunity, I'd love to see it again. I'll be honest. It was scary the first time. I don't think it would be quite so scary the second time. Particularly since he made no threatening gestures or anything like that. He was just, in retrospect, magnificent. He was magnificent. Huge, big. He was king of the mountain. There was no bears or anything that were going to run him off and kill.
It makes me wonder why they're in certain areas. But, Oregon, it seems to be a hot spot. There seem to be a lot of them in that area. Did you ever go back there, or have you been back there in recent years?
I went back recently to visit the ex-fiancée and see how she was doing. Recently, they've had a whole bunch of sightings of a family of Sasquatches in Benton County in the same general vicinity as my encounter was back in 2012. So I went out there with some local people I knew and trekked around a little bit looking for evidence, and really couldn't find anything. But there's still a lot of people seeing it to this day. So I can't argue with that many people seeing it. I'm sure they're still in the area because the area is rich with things for them to eat. There's deer, elk, fish, all kinds of berries, all kinds of tubers and stuff that just grows wild. Plus, there's all these individual sustenance farms that are on the mountain that I'm sure that they raid for crops and things like that.
Yeah, I'm sure that they do, man. That sounds like it's the perfect area for them to be, and that's probably why they've been there for so long. And there's so many sightings because it's just, they have everything they need. They have food, they've got water, and they've got shelter. So that really does make sense. I'd be curious to know, and I know that you've done a lot of research, but I would love to know what your opinion is on Bigfoot. So what do you think it is?
Well, I think it's a relic hominid, Homo something or another, not Homo sapiens or Neanderthal man or anything like that. Something earlier, something that dates from or before the time of the flood. To be honest, it's it evolved too differently than other human species to say that they were close, but it's definitely related to us.
Well, man, there's just a lot of things in God's universe that we don't understand. I know that for me personally, I really believe that they're Nephilim. And if you follow things out biblically, it just really makes sense. And it's interesting that you mentioned the flood. I have a lot of things that I believe about that and how it ties to the flood. And one of these days I'll get into that. But, I think that these are spiritual beings. They are not just flesh and blood, and they are really tied to the Genesis story. I firmly believe that. But, I appreciate you sharing that encounter, and it's not an easy thing to talk about, like I said, but I really do appreciate you sharing that with my audience.
Oh, sure, anytime.
Well, John, let me know if you see something in the future. Thanks for talking about that. I know this stuff can be traumatic, and it's not easy to talk about, and that's the whole reason for this platform is to give you a safe place to share that. So I appreciate you taking advantage of that and sharing that with my audience. I know they really enjoyed it. Guys, thank you again for being here. I love doing this, and I appreciate all the support, and I couldn't do it without you, so thank you so much for being here. If you have a story you want to send me, you can send it to me by email at video@jscreativear.com. I try to reply to every email and comment that I get. I appreciate this community that we're building, and like I always say, stay prayed up. We'll talk to you in the next episode.